Um, focus. Anyway, so I saw that movie Together, the body horror movie of the married couple, Dave Franco and Alison Brie. And, it was all right, as someone who loves body horror. I mean, it was pretty good. It was pretty gross, the amount of wetness was there. That was my whole thing with body horror. There has to be a certain amount of wetness, which makes people get really upset listening to me talk about it. And then people think I have like a weird sexual thing about it. I'm like, no, it's more visual anyway. That's why it was like that last Cronenberg movie, Crimes of the Future. I was like, that's great and all, but it's a little dry. It's a little dry for this puss. Anyway, so, I mean, when did this movie come out? Like, I don't know. I'm behind on a bunch of movies because I'm literally almost done New York Comic Con prepping. You know what I mean? Like, New York Comic Con is next weekend. You know, I have one thing left to do. Anyway, um, and it's also like spooky season's happening, so I'm getting back to my movies. So, anyway, um, I'll go into spoilers in a bit because, like I said, this is not bad. This isn't like the I know what you did last summer thing where I was just like, ah. So, um, this movie, it's about a couple who they move from like the city to like the suburb country kind of thing. They kind of live in the middle of nowhere, kind of small town-ish, because like Alison Brie's character gets like a job teaching, da da da, and it's like kids, like elementary school type of thing. And so Dave Franco's character is like, I'm a 30-something-year-old guy who's, a musician. It's like, oh god. um, and so they move, and you can tell like the relationship, even in the beginning of the movie, is a bit on the rocks kind of thing. And then this movie kind of, I don't want to say spirals, just kind of that. Like those children's toys where like there's like a ball inside a ball, and they just kind of like, yeah, that's what the movie does. Anyway, so you kind of like see how their relationship kind of goes like this, and then all that stuff. So, like I said, I enjoyed it. I wish there was a little bit more in the fact that like I kind of wish like the body horror went a little bit more extreme. Again, that's just me. I'm insane with that. That's why I love The Substance, because they went for it. They were like, we're gonna spray this entire studio of like 60 extras, just spray them with blood. We're just gonna like show you the nastiest shit ever. We're gonna make Demi Moore look awful. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, like, yeah. Um, but this, like I said, this was fine. Before I go into spoilers, it's funny because obviously Dave Franco and Alison Brie are married in real life, and you could tell they had fun making this movie. You could tell their relationship isn't on the rocks. You could tell like they had fun making this movie. It was acting of like, obviously duh chemistry because they're married. So like the chemistry between them, even like the fighting, you can tell it's good acting and all that stuff. Unlike that movie that like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt did several years ago called like By the Sea or something. It was shot beautifully. I think she directed it. It was shot beautifully, but it was like that movie was about a couple that their relationship was on the rocks, and I think at the time they were like, it was like not good, but they kept up appearances, and apparently like, the divorce finalized, I think, like a couple years ago. I don't know. I'm not like into the Hollywood gossip of that shit, but like apparently he was awful towards her, which I'm not surprised. Just look at Brad Pitt. Like, like he just looks like the type of guy who'd be awful. But yeah, like the comparison was like you could tell like this couple got together and they're like, yo, let's make this weird ass fucking movie. Let's go. Whereas that one was like, we gotta make this like Angelina Jolie was like, I need to be a director now. Okay, let's make a movie. Let's make a movie about our relationship, and I'll let everyone know how terrible our relationship is, kind of thing. And it's like, oh my god. Okay. Anyway, I'll go into spoilers. 1, 2, 3. Spoilers. So, like in the beginning of the movie where the couple's having this going away party and all that stuff, and Alison Brie's character like she gets on one knee with like no actual ring, but she's like, will you marry me kind of thing, and he kind of was like, uh, and everyone was like, yikes, that kind of stuff. And then he's like, I'm sorry, I froze, I just don't know. And he's so like he's so emotionally like distant, you know, he just like does not know how to respond to her. And like constantly if like she wants to have sex, he's like, no, I'm tired. And she's like, oh, okay, so this isn't happening, you know. They move out to the small town the small town country dealy. And you know, like the like so the regular relationship part is like they're on the rocks and things aren't going well, you know. It seems like, you know, this guy that she works with seems to have taken an interest in her, but I knew it wasn't like, oh, I like her, like, oh, I'm gonna be like the homewrecker. I knew it was like, okay, there's something else, there's something nefarious. Again, it's a body horror movie. I was like, it can't just be like, you know, I'm the actor who played Charles Manson twice in two different things. And you know, like I'm not thinking he's gonna be the homewrecker. I'm thinking he's gonna do some other type of wrecking anyway. So, um, you know, she's fine. She's a teacher, all that stuff. And then there's this whole thing where like in the beginning of the movie where you see like there's like dogs looking for like this missing couple, and they drink from like this pond thing, like or like water, whatever. They drink from it like a little pool, a little fountain thing, and then the dog just like keeps staring at each other, you know. And then later in the movie, you see like a girl in Alison Brie's class. She draws her dogs with like their heads together, like like not Cerebus, because Cerebus would be one dog, multiple heads, but it was just kind of like the like the thing, like the thing shit, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff, which good on that kid for drawing that crazy shit at that young of age, you know? I wouldn't know what it's like to draw crazy shit at a young age and then get called to the office and being like, are you okay? And I was like, this is fun. And they're like, you gotta keep an eye on this kid, you know? So there's that. So yeah, there's a missing couple, blah, 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 you know? And then, um, yeah, so one day they're just like kind of out walking around the woods and it's starting to, you know, downpour, and then they fall into like a thing and there's like the water, you know. And then Dave Franco's character is like, I'm just gonna drink from this. And it's just like I don't get people, I'm gonna say I don't get white men where they're just like, it's water, I'm gonna drink it. It's like, you don't know how long that shit's been there. You don't know what's floating in there. Do you have a life straw? You don't have a life straw with you. Do you have the water bottle with the life filter in it? Like, I mean, I get if you have that, but you're just like, I'm thirsty. I'm like, it's raining. You could have. It would have been safer. You just like held your freaking water bottle up and it like hit some like tree like dirty leaves. Drank that. That'd been safer and been like, you know, I don't know. I'm just different. I wouldn't do that. Then again, I have an issue using like I have an issue with having to use porta potties. So I'm like, you know what? I don't deal with things like that. You know what I mean? Like the amount of outdoor markets I've had to deal with, and I'm like, oh, porta potty. Oh God, I'm gonna kill myself. You know. Anyway, so yeah, they you know, they're trying to survive. They're like, well, everything's like wet and all that stuff. We're not gonna be able to climb out, whatever. So they fall asleep. And I find it funny that they're like, we're in this cave. So they took off their shoes and their socks and all that stuff. And they're like, I don't know. I wouldn't be walking in the woods like that, nor would I have fallen and slipped into a cavern and then drank random water. And then after that, being like, we'll just wait till the rain stops tomorrow morning or something, and then taking my shoes and socks off, because again, choices that people make that I don't make. I don't do that. Maybe I'm such a city person, you know. I don't know what that type of. I don't know. I would never. But anyway, they wake up and like their leg is like stuck together, and they like try to like rip it apart. It's like that kind of stuff, which was kind of cool. It was kind of cool effect. And so, you know, they're like, oh, what the hell is that? He's like, oh no, maybe it's like mildew or something. If mildew causes that, that is disgusting. You know, that's nasty. And so, yeah, so they get home, and then all of a sudden, like, Alison Brie. So Dave Franco's character doesn't drive, and Alison Brie is like, oh, I gotta go to the store or something. And also, like, yeah, like, she asks, like, you know, just for, like, a shoulder massage. And he's, like, massaging her, then he gets into, like, a trance, and he's, like, squeezing her. She's like, ah, what the fuck? She drives off, he's in the shower, and this part reminds me of Us with like the whole tethered thing, because like she's driving and then she's turning and then he's like in the shower like bonk, bonk, boom, like, she's turning right, he like hits the glass, and at one point like she just keeps going straight, and he freaking like is like pressed against the tile, and the tiles are cracking, like you hear the tile like splitting and all that stuff, and then he like comes to, and he's all bloody, he's like, what the fuck, and then he's doing like this like obsessive thing. He's like, I don't know why I'm so drawn to you all of a sudden. It's like, ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ooh, you know. He's like, I don't know, and he's like he like needs to make out with her, and she's like, oh, hi, hello, where has this been? She's like, damn, I've been wanting this shit forever, and it's like one day was like he was supposed to like take the train, go in the city because he had a gig or something, but then he just like couldn't he couldn't like, oh yeah, he went to the doctor to be like, what's wrong with me? They're like, oh, it's just probably panic attacks and anxiety because you're in a new environment or whatever stuff. You're in your 30s and you learn new things about yourself that you can't handle certain things, like, oh god, you know they say, they're like, oh, you get older, your knees hurt, blah, blah. They don't mention, like, besides your body starting to just kind of wear out, they don't mention that like in your 30s mentally you start declining, but not in like an old person mental decline, like just like you're like, oh, suddenly loud places are not okay, suddenly crowded places are not okay, suddenly like you're just like, oh, I can't if it's like I'm at the age now, if I'm out like late, it's because it's like something besides like making money, like doing a market, it's like because I wanted, like, I went to a concert the other day and I stayed out, I didn't get home till like 1 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. Back in the day, that was like the norm for me. In my 20s, I was just like taking the last train home, whatever. I don't give a shit. I'm getting home, get home at 1 a.m. and then going to bed and then having to wake up at like 6 a.m. to go to work, like crazy shit like that. Now I'm like, I'll have to go to work the next day. No, I'm not doing this thing. They're like, oh, it ends at 8. I'm like, no, that's late. I'm like, no, that's late. I didn't bring my meds with me, and I take my meds at a certain time, and I can't. I'm sorry. Anyway, about me. So, yeah, so he has to take the train. He's like, oh, I gotta take these muscle relaxants and all that stuff. And then he like leaves and then heads to Allison Brie's like school that she works at, and like takes her into the little boys' room, literally little boys' room, and like fucks her. And she's like, oh, she's like, it's been so long, she's like, ooh, maybe next time do it at home. And then like they get stuck there, they get stuck to each other, and he's like, ow, ow, and she's like, ow, ow. And then I love how she goes, I love you, and he's like, what? And she pushes him off, and he's like, oh, and it's like, oh my god, ow, ow, and then he like, she comes out of the stall, and then like Mr. I was Charles Manson twice is there, and she's like, oh, sorry, bathroom emergency, blah, blah, blah. And then like he knows like blood trickling down her leg, and she's like, oh god, then he realizes like, oh, like well, I mean, you would know she was in the stall with someone else because she was moaning really loud, and you saw feet outside of the stall, you know what I mean? It's like, girl, we know what you were doing, So there's this whole thing, what was it like, then like they realize, like, okay, there's something with like us being like magnets kind of thing. So they sleep in like separate rooms, at night, and then like Dave Franco wakes up, and it looks like he's being like, it appears like his body's being dragged down the hallway, but then he notices that it's like his hands and feet are actually pulling him, like, out. Okay, that's another thing. I'm feeling arthritic because, your 30s, and pulling across like the freaking, hallway floor, and then you see the room, like the door that Allison Brie's in. You just hear like boom, 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 and then like the door whips open, and she's full like goddamn Linda Blair, like, bent backwards, and I was like, okay, I'm like, this is weird, and then they're just like, zoom on top of each other, and then it's like, they're like, oh god, what's going on? They're holding arms, and then like the arms are like, it gets all like, they become like one thing, and that kind of stuff. Wakes up the next day, and Alison Brie is like sitting on top of Dave Franco, and he's like, what's going on? And she has like the sawzall, and like their arm is like what, whatever thing, and she's like, we're gonna cut this, and then she's like takes the sawzall, and she's like, ah, like just kind of, ah, you know, and they're on like opposite sides of the kitchen with like bandages wrapped on their arms and stuff, and it was like, what's going on, man? And then like, and I'm kind of like, what is this whole like? Part of me, it's like this feels like with weapons, where I was like, this has to be like witchcraft or something, you know what I mean? Because it's like, how is it that you like drink water in like a cave well thing, and it causes like this shit to happen? I mean, like you'd think like listeria would be the first thing, not, you know, that. And then it's like, I think like down the road is the Charles Manson guy, and you know, he talks about how like, oh, his husband is no longer with him, kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, that's kind of sad. And he goes like, oh, let me show you my wedding video, and she goes, oh, I have to go, because she sees like Dave Franco outside of the house, and part of me was like, I know you like she just moved there, and like I like part of me was like, why do you have to show the wedding video? What does the wedding video? Because part of me is like, there's something with that wedding video. Immediately, I was like, there's something with that wedding video. And, you know, um, whatchamacallit, like, you know, fast forward later in the movie, because she left her keys because she had, like, ran out of the house, and, like, Dave Franco and her, like, having whatever conversation, and then she realized, okay, we need to go to the hospital, obviously. And then she's like, fuck, my car keys are at his house. She walks back to the house, the door's open, and of course it kind of did that kind of what's the word, fake out thing where like, oh, something must have happened to him. I was like, no, this is on purpose. You know, as I've said before, you could kind of, there's movies where you could tell where it's going and you're like, that's fine, and then there's the last movie where you're like, dear God, like I knew where this was going to a degree, um and it didn't like really disappoint me. Like I said, I just wish there was a little bit more to the story. I wish there was just like, you know, like just, I don't know. Again, for like a movie that's about like kind of like codependency and like relationships and da da da. I'm like, it's fine. But again, I'm focusing on the body horror, and I was like, give me more. You know, that's just me. Anyway, so yeah, she gets into his house, and then the wedding video is being played, and you see two people who you're like, I don't. Who are these two people? You know what I mean? And then it's two men, and then they're like, oh, we're there's like some kind of ritual thing where you get put together and something like that's part of the ritual. It's like you get married and then you get fused into one, because there's this whole thing about like Plato said like, oh, you know, like what was it like, we as humans actually had like, what was it, like two heads, four arms, four legs, and then like, you know, like was it God split us and stuff, and that's why people like the whole soulmate thing, you know, blah 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 blah, you know, and it's like, sure, why not, man. And so yeah, you see like this video of like it's two men, and then you don't recognize either of them, and then you see them like they slice their arm, and then they're like all fused together, and then you know you're supposed to infer that Charles Manson guy is the fusion of the two men. Um, so it's like, oh, okay, you and your husband are one. Okay, that's weird. I don't understand. So like, do you still get like the marriage tax? You know what I mean? Do you still get like, you know, that type of thing? Is it just one insurance? You know what I mean? Do you change the name? You know, when you're fused into one person? You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, is it still a joint bank account? I don't know. You know. So he's pretty much saying like you and Dave Franco need to fuse into one person, kind of stuff, and they're like, you know, saying like that couple that went missing, that was the whole thing, the couple that went missing in the beginning of the movie, like Dave Franco, during that, Dave Franco went back in the cave and sees that, like, you know, finds that couple, and they're all like looking, because they're like refusing to fully fuse, because the guy, you see, he has like a, I almost actually just pulled my, and went like this. I really glad I just looked at it, because sometimes this thing is fully out. Sometimes this thing is fully out, and could you imagine if I just stabbed myself in the neck in a video? But anyway, I'm very tired. I really need to watch myself. Anyway, but the guy had like a freaking knife or something in his neck, so it's like she's all fucked up because he's probably dead now, and all fused, all like weird. Because you know he had like, I think, blonde hair, and then she had pink hair, so you see like half the head has blonde, the other half is pink. It's like all that part was great. That was really great, gross shit, you know. And so like, pretty much, yeah, like Charles Manson guy, it's so funny to call him Charles Manson, but Charles Manson guy, it's like, no, you guys have to fuse together, that's the whole point. Because you realize like there's this thing with like the like instead of doorbells, they have like, you know, like dinner's ready type of bells outside of their houses, and then like yeah, that's like the whole thing. That's again kind of like Hereditary, where you know it's like, oh, everyone has that insignia type of shit, you know. Um, and so when Alison Brie and Dave Franco came to get like were back together, and she like ran away from Charles Manson guy, they kind of were like, well, our relationship's been on the rocks, and like this has kind of been like helping us, you know. They're like, sure. So then that night they were like, all that stuff, and they like, you know, they start fusing, you know, they get all, you get to see Alison Brie's titties, you know, they all naked, and then they're like all that stuff, and then freaking the next day, I think it's like supposed to be Alison Brie's like parent or something, they ring the dinner's ready bell, and then opens the door is like freaking, you know, androgynous, you know, Alison Brie. It kind of like them fused together. It kind of looks like I forgot the name of the actress, but she was in Penguin. She was the Falcone woman. She kind of looks like that because with like the short hair. And then it's like he opens the door and it's like, hi. Someone on Letterboxd said like, what was it like non-binary, you know, like non-binary the movie. So funny. But yeah, it's like open the door and it's like, hi mom and dad, I am me, and then also my boyfriend at the same time. That's so weird. That's weird. It's like the movie ends like that. It's like, hey, I'm like, okay. So like you move into this town and like people fuse together. I don't know, man. It continues the whole thing about like small towns and all that shit, and why I would never. I feel like me and my bestie, when we drive through like small towns to get to other things, or we have to go through small towns to get to like a random field to do outdoor markets, and we're always just like, no, we're not gonna do just like a random rest stop. We have to do like whatever like state sanctioned rest stops, you know, like on the turnpike or the parkway type of shit. We're like, no, 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 this is, you know, this is like Frank Sinatra, you know, what do you call it, rest stop near Atlantic City. We're gonna do that. You know, we're not gonna do like, you know, I mean, we had stopped by like a random Wawa and got stopped by a lot lizard, and I was like, let's get the fuck out of here. So it happens we get all the way to the southest part of Jersey. I'm like, what is this? You know, no, none of that small town shit, because it like it has visually like it's cute because it's all like ooh aesthetic and all that stuff, and so many little small businesses, and it'll be like one like a Wawa or something, but it's all like it's cute, but like I'm just like I don't trust any of this shit. I watch too many movies. Give me my big city, you know. Give me my big city with my issues, you know. Oh, my mass transit, you know. I love my mass transit. I'm not car reliant, you know. Anyway, yeah. So that was the movie. Like I said, like the body horror part was great. Again, I wish there was a little bit more. The whole idea of the movie being about like codependency, about like a couple and all that stuff, and about the relationship being kind of like this, and then things working out in the end, you know. Oh, and it was funny because when they did that, they put on Spice Girls the song "To Become One," which was hilarious. Because when they put on that album, I thought to myself was like, what song? I was like, it can't be like, you know, I say what I want while they're like doing, like it has to be like a slow song. And it's been ages since I heard the Spice Girls. So when that song came on, I immediately was like, oh my god, it's "To Become One." Like I immediately heard it and I was like, oh my god. I was like, that's perfect. That's perfect. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, it was alright movie. It was alright. Yeah.